Hello, this is Roger Weston, reading the first chapter of Salvage Bay, an early episode, a prelude to the series that I'll leave a link in the description below. It's called Salvage Bay. This is chapter 1, Cargo Ship Rebecca, Inside Passage of Alaska. On his way to the galley, Chuck spotted a copper-brown stain on the carpet. He kneeled down for a closer look because the dried blood had shades of crimson. It was a thick stain, indicating a lot of spill. He kneeled there a minute and noticed a dried crimson splatter on the wall. He arrived late to the officers' mess, a spacious room with long tables. The captain stood. Captain Goring was pale-faced, like a man emerging from a cave after months with no light. His thin lips pressed tightly together, as if he was feeling tension. His gray hair was pasted to his head and gave way to long, bushy gray sideburns. Puffy bags hung under his glittering eyes. "Mr. Brandt, glad you could join us. We have an extra place at our table." A woman in a chef's apron drifted over and gave him a choice of meals. Chuck couldn't help notice that her lips were trembling. Her facial features were sunken, and she avoided eye contact. Leaving, she walked stiffly and disappeared into the kitchen. The captain gestured with a sweep of his arm. "Allow me to introduce your fellow passengers. We brought as many as a dozen. But for this run, you're an exclusive society. Where's your traveling companion?" "Rebecca, she'll be right along." "Of course I love her name. How did she happen to choose the Rebecca for a cruise?" "There's something in the charm of coincidence." "Wonderful. This here is Professor Ellen Sevens. She's a professor from UCLA. What did you say you teach, Professor?" Sevens was a black-haired, dark-eyed woman with an elfin mask-like face and bobbed hair, almost a man's haircut. She winced at the captain's oversight. "Sociology." Chuck nodded. "Pleased to meet you. That sounds like a fascinating field. I'd love to talk with you about it if we get a chance." She shrugged. Captain narrowed his eyes at Chuck. "Mr. Brent, haven't we met before?" "Not that I know of." "You do look familiar, though." "I hear that all the time. I have one of those faces." The captain gestured at the man sitting next to Professor Severance. "Dale Monday is an insurance salesman who won this trip in a regional sales contest. Life insurance, wasn't it, Dale?" "That's right." The captain looked at Chuck. "I trust you purchased life insurance before we left port. If not, there's still time. You may have another client right here, Dale." The captain gave a booming laugh. "Are you risk adverse, Chuck?" "Yes, I'm afraid so. I believe in minimizing risk." "Please sit down. You're a man of the sea, isn't that right?" The captain took a drink from his mug. Chuck eased into his chair. "I'm fitting out a cargo ship for humanitarian missions." "By definition, then, you will be visiting war zones, plague zones, disaster zones, and dictatorships. Maybe you court danger more than you say." "No more than necessary." "Well, I'm attracted to danger, I'm afraid." "Oh, don't worry, Professor. I avoid rough seas whenever possible. I like smooth sailing, but on land, I'm an adrenaline junkie. Nothing makes a man feel more alive than when he's close to death." A husky, dark-haired man, mustachioed man, was sitting next to Chuck. He said, "You sound like a gambling man, Captain. I hope you play the odds right." The captain gave a booming laugh. If only life were that simple. Chuck, this is Sebastian Matthews. He knows something of playing the odds. He's a professional gambler." Sebastian sat back in his chair. "Are you a player, Chuck?" "I play a little blackjack when I'm at sea. That's about all." "We're at sea now. Maybe we play a little later." "Why not?" The captain laughed. "You'll jump into a game with a professional gambler just like that? I thought you were risk adverse." Chuck smiled. "Nobody mentioned money. I usually play for quarters and get out when I'm $3 down." Everyone laughed at that. At this, except Professor Severns, she stared blankly at Chuck with no emotion in her eyes. Maybe the professor would like to play with us as well, Chuck said. She shook her head quickly and looked away. I'm on a winning streak lately, Dale Monday said. You can count me in. Sebastian nodded. Always glad to have another player. However, when they've just won contests, that's a little different. You're not backing out, are you? Monday said. Of course not. Would you care to join us, Captain? I'm afraid I'll be on duty. Perhaps some other time. Captain gazed at Chuck. I knew I recognized you. Really? Unless I'm mistaken, you were in the news a while back. A lot of bad information, Captain. You were listed as, correct me if I'm wrong, you were listed as number 1 on the FBI's 10 most wanted. That was a big national story, something to do with coup d'etat in South America, wasn't it? There's a reason why I'm no longer on the FBI list, Captain. Well, my apologies for bringing it up. It just hit me that I knew why you looked familiar. It happens. It was a media circus. My face was everywhere. You intrigue me, Mr. Brandt. You were just saying how you like to avoid risk and danger. The woman in the cook's apron emerged from the kitchen and put a plate down in front of Chuck. Thank you very much. I haven't eaten all day. The attendant nodded quickly, without eye contact. She shuffled away with her head down. Enjoy, the captain said. Margie isn't the best cook in the Pacific, but the price is right. Margie disappeared into the kitchen. The second mate hurried into the room and gestured to the captain. The captain waved him off. I'll be along soon, in a few minutes. At that moment, a scream pierced the cozy atmosphere.